and as folks join, we can go ahead. Good afternoon or evening now. My name is Sean Chrysostom. I am the engagement specialist here for Capital One, and I teach financial literacy and that includes everything from credit to home ownership. My job is really to help people understand how money works and get them to understand what are some of the things that may be keeping them from achieving their dreams, things that are keeping them from achieving the financial stability that they'd like for themselves and their family. And a lot of times it comes down to what I've learned is just understanding how things work. A lot of times what happens is we go to school and we get skills, but we don't really learn how money works and how to make it work for us, how to build wealth and those sorts of things. So one of the things I'd like to do before we kick this off, and I'm going to be with you for the next several weeks, so we've got lots of time to go over everything. So I want to take my time. I really want to make this a dialogue, not a monologue, not me speaking to some boxes on a screen, because you're all real life people. And I want to make sure that you understand and that I answer any questions that I can that you may have about your personal finances, about financial situations that you may be aware of. I may not be able to answer them all, but I definitely want to answer those that I can. So the first thing I want to do before I share a PowerPoint or do anything else is I'd like to just kind of, first of all, talk about what I call wealth versus income. And that's really critical because most of the time people think they're one and the same, and they're not. So if I could just throw it out there, and if I could just get one brave soul to tell me what they believe is the difference between wealth and income. And this is all key because when we talk about credit, we talk about savings, we talk about home ownership, we talk about any of that, we're really talking about the ability to generate wealth and the ability to generate generational wealth. So anybody want to kick us off? Who wants to be brave and tell me what the difference is between wealth and income? Do I have one taker, one person? All right, Bellamy typed it in. Wealth equals security. Income is an avenue on how to get there. I like it. I like that. Excellent. So if we think about wealth, wealth generally means what? That basically it can work for us, whereas income you have to work for. On a regular basis, you have to go and earn an income, okay? And as Bellamy says, wealth equals security. Okay, so that's one aspect. Anybody else, anything else? When you think about wealth versus income, what comes to mind? What would you say is the difference?
Hi, this is Linda. How are you today?
I am excellent.
Can you hear me? Oh, good, good. And I'm sorry, I'm in my car talking, but what came to mind, and I might be wrong, but I'm just putting it out there, is just like assets with wealth versus with income. Like you said, it's ongoing.
Excellent, Jalinda. Now let's tighten it up a little bit. Not just any assets though, because technically, if I have a car, that's an asset, right? But what kind of asset is that? Is it an appreciating asset or depreciating asset?
Oh, that's depreciating. I don't even have to know a whole bunch to know that that's depreciating.
All right. So what we want to do, right, Jalinda, is that generally wealth means that we've accumulated what? Appreciating assets that work for us versus us having to go to work on a regular basis. So that's one of the keys, but you're totally correct. Unfortunately, what too many people do is they acquire depreciating assets or liabilities and think that they're appreciating or really don't understand how important it is to get appreciating assets. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. Let's say, for example, that someone buys a house and they buy it for $250,000. And 12, 15 years later, that house is worth $500,000. Okay, that house is appreciated $250,000. Jalinda, did that person have to work for that? Did they have to work for that appreciation?
No.
No, the house did it because real estate, particularly residential real estate, but commercial as well, goes up in value. Now, every month they pay the mortgage, they pay down, okay, the balance of the mortgage. So their equity, and that's a word I want you to add to your vocabulary. Equity just means your ownership in an asset. So that's an appreciating asset. Now let's look at a car. If I buy a car for $20,000 today, in 5 years from now, that car may be only worth what? $5,000. Okay. Plus that car, and I could use it to generate income, but it's not generally able to generate income for me. I can take that house, not only is it appreciating, but if I go buy another house and I rent out that house, and so someone is paying my mortgage, but they're paying me over and above my mortgage, now that asset is also generating income for me without me having to go to work. So the couple things I'll give to you, and these are my 3 tenets that I say about the difference between wealth and income, is 1, wealth works for you, income you work for, okay? The second difference that I would place out there for you is that wealth is generational, okay? The other difference is I can't pass a job on to my children or grandchildren.
It's not connecting no more.
Hello?
I don't have to connect the place.
Hello?
I apologize. I apologize.
No problem. All right, so one of the things that we have to understand is that whereas wealth works for you and income you work for, wealth is generational. That means that I have, for instance, I have 2 kids, a soon to be 27-year-old next week and a 21-year-old. I can leave my wealth or my assets to them, as Jolinda said, but can I leave a job? No, I can't leave a job for them. And so that's one of the things we have to understand is that wealth is also able to be transferred to the next generation. The next generation doesn't have to start at a deficit. They can actually start with certain things that allow them some freedom to do other things. The last thing I will share with you is wealth has tax benefits, okay? That the design in the system is such that you get tax benefits for generating income from wealth versus income from working. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand that, or did I lose you? There are tax benefits to generating income from wealth versus generating income from working a job. Is everybody clear on that? Okay, Jolinda says she agrees. All right. Do you want me to give you an example of what I mean? Or is everybody pretty clear on that?
I'm clear.
You're clear? All right, sounds good. So that's why it's very important for us to understand that everything we do in the next 4 weeks is with the goal of you understanding the difference between wealth and income and taking the income that you make now and turning it into wealth, turning it into ways to generate wealth for you and for your family, okay? So now, having said that, the next question that I'm gonna throw out to you is there's really only 4 major ways or 4 primary ways to generate wealth in this country, okay? And I promise you I'm gonna get to credit, but this is the lead up so you understand why it's important to have good credit and how good credit leads to wealth, okay? So there's only 4 primary ways to generate wealth in this country. Who can give me the first? Somebody give me the first, the primary way that you can generate wealth in this country.
Home ownership.
Home ownership, so we'll call that real estate. Thank you, Barbara, real estate, excellent. Give me a second way.
Inheritance.
Barbara, excellent. That's the one people forget. In fact, one of the things I will tell you, this is kind of a depressing fact if it's not you, not that you want a relative to die, but over the next probably 5 to 10 years, we're going to have more wealth transfer hands in this country than has ever transferred before. Barbara, you've gotten 2 for 2. Do you know why that's going to happen? Why are we going to have like literally trillions of dollars transfer of wealth transferring hands in about the next 5 to 10 years?
Because there's so many baby boomers.
Barbara, are you peeking in my notes? Are you cheating? And see, you didn't tell me that, Sheba, that we had a cheater here.
How did you catch me?
Because you are too sharp. Most people are not aware of that. Exactly. Baby boomers who hold the largest amount of wealth, unfortunately, they have to, like their parents and grandparents, go into the ground. And so literally the wealth they have in real estate, the wealth that they have from inheritance. Now, there are 2 other ways. What are the 2 other ways? You can't answer, Barbara. What are the 2 other ways to generate wealth in this country between real estate, after real estate and inheritance? 2 other ways. Now, there's more, but these are the primary ways. Let me phrase it that way. These are the primary ways that most people in this country have generated wealth. Third is the what? Stock market.
Investments,
exactly. And what's the 4th way? More millionaires are made this way than any other, but it's also the riskiest. Entrepreneurship, owning your own small business. So those are the four primary ways. Now, as Barbara said, because baby boomers, those born right at around 1945, right after the war, to 1962, if you think about it, 1945, those individuals are like 77, okay? 1962, those individuals are 60. In the next 10 to 15 years, you're talking about folks who are going to be 92 and 75. Many are going to be passing on. Some won't be passing on, but they'll transfer it anyway. That wealth has to go to the next generation. So the billions and hundreds of billions of dollars in real estate, the billions and hundreds of billions of dollars in the stock market, and the billions and billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars in small businesses, okay, now will be transferred to the next generation, okay? And so that's the difference between wealth and income, okay? They can't take it with them. And so it's going to be transferred to the next generation. So why is that important? It's important because now we have to understand, why does this country favor wealth over income? All right, because it does. Okay, and let me give you one example. I'll give you just one of the best examples. Let's say my wife and I, we bought a house, let's say 15, literally about 17 years ago. And the real estate market, I live in the greater Washington area, has gone through the roof. And we are able to sell our house, and we have a capital gains. In other words, we realize a net profit of $500,000 on the sale of that house, because the house is just appreciated so dramatically. What percent, you don't have to give me a dollar amount, what percent of that do we have to pay in taxes to the county and to the federal government?
Oh, probably 50.
50, anybody else?
It's 20 on capital gains. But
what percent do we have to pay? Come on, somebody else wants to give me an answer.
28.
28, all right, so Barbara came down from 50.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jolinda, you unmuted yourself, go for it.
Okay.
I was gonna say 30.
30, all right, anybody else? The answer is actually zero, okay? A husband and wife have a $500,000 exemption on their primary residence. A single person has half of that. Or
Primary, that's it.
And maybe I didn't make that clear, on your primary residence, okay? So that means on a $500,000 in appreciation. Now you're right, on capital gains, if I hold stock for over a year, depending on what my income is, I could pay either 15 or 20%, but I don't pay my marginal tax rate, which might be 30, 35%.
Excuse me, can I say something?
Oh yes, absolutely. Who's To Love LLC?
This is the Keisha Cummings.
Hi, Dakisha, how are you?
No, the, like T-H-E.
Oh, the as in the.
Yes.
Okay, the Keisha. All right, go ahead.
So I don't know, but I know you guys. I'm sorry. I know you guys like kind of know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Like y'all are saying like capital gains and marginalized, and I know I may sound ignorant to you guys, but I have no idea what that stuff means.
Thank you for stopping me. No, always do that. Always do that. Okay, so let me explain what I mean. Thank you so much. All right, so capital gains just means when you buy an asset and you hold it for a certain amount of time, that's called capital gains, okay? So like, for example, if I buy 100 shares of Amazon, okay? And the way the tax laws work is that if I hold it for over a year, then I sell it and I make a profit, I have to pay less in taxes than if I sold it within a year. It's called a capital gain. Same thing with regard to a house, the capital gains or the gains on the property. So, and that gets me right to, so in other words, here's the, and I kind of answered the question I was going to throw to you guys. When we talk about capital gains, it's predominantly used with stock. They allow you that if you hold it for a certain amount of time, the taxes you have to pay on that are not as high as if you sell it quickly. That's why most people who buy and flip and sell quickly, whether it's stocks, they generally don't make money. Usually it's better to buy and hold, whether it's stocks or mutual funds. Now, let me explain what a mutual fund is. For those of you who may not know, an exchange traded fund. A mutual fund is just a portfolio of investments. So rather than buying an individual stock in a company, I might buy stock in 500 companies through an index fund, and it'll buy shares in 500 of the largest companies. I generally recommend in mutual funds over individual stocks, because when you put all of your eggs in one basket, if that one company goes south, then your finances are all gone. But capital gains is generally when you invest in something and you hold it over a certain period of time, the tax laws give you a benefit in terms of the taxes you have to pay. So that's why people buy and hold shares of things for a period of time, and they'll work with their accountant because the taxes they may have to declare are less. So for example, I gave you the example of a house. Okay, Keisha, do you, when you buy a house, if you lived in it and it's your primary residence for 3 of the last 5 years, what happens is that then that kicks in as far as not having to pay any taxes on up to $500,000 of the appreciation or the capital gains, the amount it's appreciated. You have to live in it 3 of the last 5 and you don't pay any taxes. So one of the things that
you don't pay any taxes on a home.
You have to pay, you pay taxes each month when you make your mortgage payment, but when you sell it, you don't have to pay on it. So let me give you an example. Let's say my wife and I bought our house for $200,000 and over 20 years it appreciated to be worth $700,000. And when we sell it, we make $500,000 in profit because the house has gone up in value. That $500,000, we don't have to pay any taxes on it.
Let me ask you this. Because
yeah,
I want to.
Now she coming in. She's like, oh, now come on with it. Go ahead, love it. Go ahead.
No, I have to because you have to break it down where I'm able to understand it, so I could break it down to people that I have to be. This is like another language, so I don't mind asking questions.
I love it. I love questions.
When you say buy a house, do you mean actually purchase a house, or how generally Black people do and be paying a mortgage for 35 years?
Well, that's called purchasing. That's called buying a house. Very few people pay cash for a house. So buying a house where you get a mortgage, okay. But even if you didn't, if you were able to purchase it cash, but very few people can purchase a house cash. However you decide to buy it. Now, most people, when they buy a house, they're really financing it. So what they're doing is they take out a 30-year mortgage, okay. And on that 30-year mortgage, you're paying it over 30 years. Now you're paying down the balance on that mortgage, but you still own a portion of the house. The bank owns the majority of it, but over time, as you continue to pay it down and it appreciates in value and you pay down the balance of the mortgage, you generate what's called equity. That's your ownership. So let's say I buy the house for $200,000, but I only put $20,000 down. So I have a mortgage of $180,000. I bought it for $200,000. I put $20,000 down. I only have $20,000 in equity. But as that house now grows to be worth $400,000, and I pay the balance down to $100,000, now I have that difference. 4 minus 1, I have $300,000 in equity. Okay. And so my example is, let's say my wife and I sell the house and they say your capital gains or your appreciation on that house was $320,000. That's how much I gained on it. And I walk away from the bank with a $320,000 check or wire into my account. I don't have to pay any taxes on that money. Happy birthday, Plan. Okay.
Okay.
Did I lose you?
No, you didn't lose me at all.
Okay. So that's why it's important to understand. Now I'm going to really break it down for you. Okay. So now the question becomes, why would this country and why would the system, and the system we operate in is called capitalism, why would it favor wealth generated through assets, or income, I should say, generated through assets like that, through the stock market, through small business, through real estate? Why would it favor that over somebody going and working 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week? Okay, why would it do that? Does anybody know?
Yeah, because they don't benefit off of that. They don't benefit off of people being independent and entrepreneurs, and they need people to work the system.
Well, not, I mean, to some degree, but there's a deeper reason. There's a deeper reason. All right, here, let me ask you a question, Keisha. If you were writing the rules to a game, would you write them to favor you or favor me?
To favor me, of course.
All right. Okay. So who writes the rules to capitalism?
People that benefit off of it.
Ah, okay. How do they do it?
Because they generate money off of the backs of, I mean, you kind of, I don't really know how to articulate. They generate money off of keeping people. I mean, I'm on some like systematic us versus system type thing. So I don't want to be on here and people like, oh, this girl crazy, she's a radical. But I mean, for me, is out the lenses that I look at. They generate money off of, and they run off of greed, off of the
All right, let me ask you this. You said if you were writing rules to a game, you would write them to favor you over me, right?
No, actually, if I was writing rules to a game, I would write them to favor me, but I favor the people.
You go favor you or the people. All right, well, let me ask you this. There are rules to capitalism, and you have to understand who writes the rules, okay? Now, technically, Congress writes the rules. There's 3 branches of government, okay? There's the judicial, which is the Supreme Court. Then you have the legislative, which is Congress. And then you have the presidency, okay? Congress writes the rules, and the way they write the rules is, what do you pay every April 15th, Akeisha?
Taxes.
Taxes. They just write it into the tax law. That rule that I just told you about with the primary residence is written where? In the tax law. The rule with regard to the the benefits of stocks and investments held for are written into the tax law. Now here's the question: why would they write that into the rules? Do you think most Congress people own their house or rent?
Own.
Do you think most of them have family members, or they themselves own small businesses?
Yes.
Do you think most of them own stocks and mutual funds and investments?
Yes.
So do you think they're going to write rules that favor those things or favor having to work a job?
Of course, rules that favor those things.
And that's simply it. Now, you can be radical. I don't mind that, but here's what I'm telling you. If you then acquire those things, guess what? The rules favor that. Who then?
Me.
Exactly. Does that make it? See, because they're never going to write rules that don't favor those things, because they be writing rules that work against themselves. Because they also want to take all that benefit and transfer it to who? Their children. So when you understand that my goal is to use my income to acquire things that not only appreciate in value, but also have tax advantages, then I start to understand, okay, this is how, I'll use the phrase, the game is played. And if I play it right, then I can benefit from it, because that's how the rules are written. But unfortunately, most people aren't taught that, so they don't work the rules to help it benefit them. They become the ones that benefit other people. And I'll show you that when I talk about credit. Okay, my friend? Have I made sense?
You have made sense, but I'm so sorry. I have somebody cleaning, and she was asking me a question, and I had to answer her. So could you please, could you please repeat it, please?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that if Congress writes the rules and they have those things, they're going to write them to favor them. And so what I'm saying to you is this, is that I don't disagree that rules favor certain people in this country, okay? The wealthy, okay? Because the wealthy also lobby Congress. But my point is, my goal, I'm 57, so I will be 57, making myself a little older, not till October. My point is, what I try to teach people is, if you understand how the rules work, then you can play the game to win the game. I love playing Monopoly. And normally I sometimes start with teaching Monopoly. Most people have played Monopoly, but they don't know. They know the rules, but they have no strategy for Monopoly. There's a strategy to Monopoly. There's a strategy to capitalism. And so if you acquire assets that have tax favored status and that appreciate, then you are playing the game that will allow you, and when I say to win, to be able to have wealth that you can transfer to the next generation, as opposed to someone who is busy making wealth for other people. So for example, if I have a 4-unit apartment building, and let's say Sheba, Barbara, Jolinda, and you live in all 4 units of that building. Now you need some place to live, and I'm giving you a nice place to live, but each and every month that you pay me rent, guess what I do with that rent? I pay down the mortgage, okay? And that property appreciates. So while you're living there, that's good. But what you have to say is, how quickly can I get out of here so I can acquire something where I'm not building equity and wealth for somebody else, but I'm building it for myself? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. And it's the same thing with owning a business. Okay. You work for somebody, I work for Capital One, but if you have an entrepreneurial bent, you may be running a side hustle because you say, I want to grow this thing so that I can benefit from not only giving people employment, but in a sense, as they're working in the business, they're working and I'm getting a portion of their labor. And the same thing then also with investments. Okay, if I invest into 10 companies, okay, then as those companies generate a profit off of the sales that they generate, and the value of those stocks and those investments go up, then I'm generating benefit from that. So I'm getting a benefit from everybody that goes and buys Amazon, everybody that buys Nike, everybody that goes to McDonald's. I'm not having to work for that money. I've invested in something, and if I've made wise investments and I hold it over a certain period of time, history shows those right investments will go up in value and can pay me income without me having to go do physical labor. The other nice thing is they go up in value without me having to do anything. So in other words, while I'm on vacation, it can be appreciating. While I'm sleeping, it's appreciating. I don't have to get up and go and punch a clock or do work for it to do it. Nothing wrong with working, but I have to find a way to direct my income into ways that generate wealth, as opposed to taking my income and spending it on things that don't generate wealth. We always have to spend on some things that don't generate wealth. But if I direct it towards, what you have to do is begin to get from being a consumer to an investor. And that's really the key to understanding how capitalism works and who it favors. Okay?
Yes.
Now, I said all of that, and now I'm going to get into any questions before I start to share my screen and jump into credit.
One last question. You said something about taxes when you have a husband and a wife. Is it not the same if you're single?
Single, you get half, 250.
I'm sorry.
250,000. So in other words, a husband and wife get a $500,000 to 500,000 exemption. For a single person, they get half of that, 250,000.
Oh, so it benefits for a man to have a wife then.
Well, but you got to split it between two. They look at it like this: one individual gets half, two people get twice as much.
You're like breaking up. You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Okay, so let's say someone is single. They get $250,000 exemption. So in other words, if they buy a house and they sell it and they make $240,000 in profit off the sale of the house, they don't have to pay any taxes. But if it's a husband and wife, each of them gets 250. So that's how you get 500. 250 for one, 500 for two.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen, and please stop me. Any questions? Anytime I go too fast, anytime I say something you don't understand, absolutely pause it and I will stop. All right. So we're going to talk about credit voyage. And the way credit, I'll show you how credit plays a role in everything that we've talked about. So I'm going to skip ahead, skip these couple things here. And again, I want you to be interactive. You can unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can put it in the chat, okay? Either way, all right? So here's what I want you to understand. Credit plays a role not just in borrowing money. That's a lot of times what people think about, and that is the primary way that people pull your credit. But I want you to put in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and talk to me. Who are some of the other people and companies that pull your credit beside a lender? We know a bank, we know a finance company, we know credit unions, lenders pull your credit, but who else looks at your credit? Does anybody know who else?
An employer.
Employers, excellent, Jolinda. A lot of employers will pull your credit now as part of your background check. Who else? What about landlords? Some landlords will pull your credit before they'll rent you a property. Okay, who else? There are utility companies that will pull your credit. I'll give you another one that most people are not aware of. Insurance companies use credit when they calculate your policy, okay? And so there are a lot of ways that your credit is used and it can impact you. So that's one of the reasons it's important to work and having good credit, because it helps you in that whole goal of doing what? Building wealth. Because when you have poor credit, it costs you more. That's less money in your pocket, and that's more that you put out. But when you have good credit, that's less you put out, and it can benefit you from a job. Also, another example, cell phone companies will pull credit, okay? A lot of times before they finance that phone for you. Jobs pull it, landlords pull it, insurance companies use it, okay? So let's talk about the basics of credit. What is a credit score? What is a credit score? So a credit score is a number between 300 and 850 that summarizes how likely lenders think you are to repay credit. So a strong credit score is numbers in the 700, 730, 740, 780, which could give you access to future credit, means you're less likely to be declined, and you'll get the lowest rate possible. And that's really critical now that rates are going up. We were spoiled by low interest rates for a long time, but now rates are headed up. Okay, so let me ask the question. You don't have to tell me your score or anything. Who here has seen their score recently? Who has pulled their score within the last couple months? Anybody? Anybody check on their credit score for any reason, on a regular thing or for a particular reason? Okay, Jolinda, excellent. I recommend that you, Sheba, I see your hand up. You ready to ask a question or just saying that you've checked yours?
I check it all the time.
All right. I would recommend checking your score at least once or twice a month, only because one of the things that happens when you check your score is you make sure, and Kayla has to, and Bellamy says that they have excellent. You make sure that there's no errors on your score. And the nice thing is today and now, you don't have to worry about, there's so many easy ways to check your score. I prefer using apps. So there's Credit Karma, there's Credit Wise, there's Credit Sesame. There are three major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. The reason I like using Credit Wise and Credit Karma is Credit Wise will give me access to not only my credit score, but my TransUnion account. Credit Karma will give me access to my Equifax account. And Credit Wise will give me alerts that come on my Experian. So I have information on all three credit bureaus that could impact me, okay? And so I recommend the apps also because if something changes on your score, they'll notify you. They'll say, hey, your score's gone up or your score's gone down, or hey, we've detected something new or something's gotten paid off. That's a quick alert that can get you to look into it and stop any fraud or anything that's happening on your account. But however you choose to do it, I would recommend checking on your score at least once every couple months, 2 to 3 months, okay? Whenever
I have a question. Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry. So, and I'm listening from two different lenses, myself, and then for the topic of, returning citizens and being able to help them understand, how money and credit and wealth, contributes to their rebuilding. So, credit wise, I know is a Capital One thing.
But you don't have to be a
available to
Capital One
people?
customer. You can do
That
it.
was my question.
Yep.
Great. Okay, that was it.
Yeah.
Credit Karma, I know everybody has, but I wasn't sure. I thought Credit Wise was just Capital One.
Yes, it is Capital One. Thank you, Jolinda. I should have mentioned that, and I usually do. You do not have to be a Capital One customer. If you are a Capital One customer, it's already part of the Capital One app, so you don't have to download it separately. But if you're not a Capital One customer, it is a free service. You do not have to be a Capital One customer. No ads, nothing to pull you in. It's just a free service to be able to monitor your credit. Thank you. Great question. And thank you for checking me on that. I appreciate that. You do not have to be a Capital One customer. So when you check your credit, that's called a soft pull. It never has a negative impact on your score. You can check your score as often as possible. Someone have a question?
Yes, this is Keisha.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying this because on the flyer it said people coming from a place of trauma. And for me, I don't check my credit score. I have no idea what my credit score is. And it's because it really came from a place of trauma. Like I used to be able to do that. And I got in a situation where I was not able to like mentally, neurologically do anything but survive. And so as long as my rent was paid and I had a way to and from work and my kids was fed, that was it. I intentionally stopped checking stuff because I knew that where I was mentally, if I checked something that I couldn't handle, that it was going to just break me. So I just paid the necessities. I stopped and and now I'm at a different place now financially, and just in my life period. But that's traumatic for me to check my and again it might sound crazy to people, but that's traumatic for me to have check my credit score. It was traumatic for me to even go to a mailbox because I didn't want to get a bill that I knew I couldn't handle because that just would have been on nervous breakdown, have a stroke status because so much trauma already going on in your life. And so I'm just trying to, I'm scared to check my credit score. But I want to though. Like I want to now because I'm not in that place anymore. You know, thank you to God. But I'm just thinking, you know, I don't know. That's like, because it's like, well, what do I do next? Like, it's just like going somewhere, like you just an unfamiliar, a total unfamiliar space for me. As you can see, like I didn't know those words that y'all was saying earlier.
No problem. I totally understand. Thank you, Keisha. And I understand that there are times where we want to, but I liken it to this, Keisha. If I have a physical problem wrong in my body and I'm scared because I don't know what it could be, is it better for me to not go and see a doctor because I don't want to know the truth? Or is it better for me to go and find out what the problem is so I can work on it to improve my health?
It's funny you say that, right? Because I'm gonna tell you just traumatically.
Mhm.
I pick my son up from school almost daily, and it's this old man there, and I call him Grandpa because he picked his grandson up. And I said, "How you doing today, Grandpa?" And he showed me his wrist, and he just came from the hospital. And I was like, "Oh, like what happened? You okay?" He was like, "No, I had to leave out." And I was like, "Well, what you mean?" He was like, "I left out. I had a heart attack." And he was like, "But I left out." He was like, I messed up in my life. He was like, and I refused to like die, and my kids had bills. And I was like, "But Grandpa, like you gotta go back. Like you know, they not gonna be good if you ain't here." He was like, "I'd rather die than, you know, put that on my kids because I already didn't do stuff for them growing up." And so I'm just trying to say like that it'd be really traumatic for people and stuff like that. So like I'm just giving that analogy in terms of like this man literally left against doctor's orders because he was scared about getting a medical bill that he didn't want to get onto his kids. Because he was like, "I got a house. I don't want to lose the house. Like, at least I could do something for them now." And I was like, you know, and I get it.
No, and that's a real situation. And that's what I love about these workshops, because we're not talking about theoretical. What you're talking about is real life. And that's why I'm passionate about what I do. And so, but what I always say to people is that from the standpoint of, you know, and I understand what he's looking at, but I would think most of his children would say that, or his children would, and grandchildren, I assume, would say, "We'd rather have you than the money." But I understand that some people are so fearful. And so what I try to get people to understand is, if you feel like you can't look at it, I totally respect that. But at some point, you have to move to the point where I have to look at it, because that's the only way I can fix it. That's the only way I can know what's there. That's the only way I can begin to say, how do I go from where I am right now to where I want to be? Because the things that I assume you want to do in your life, Keisha, and you want to do for your children are going to require credit generally. Okay, so if you wanted to buy a home, I don't know if you own one house, but if you wanted to buy a home, at some point you're going to have to apply for a mortgage. If you want to get a newer car, you're going to have to apply for a car loan. Okay, if you want to go and interview for a new job that your skills now afford you to get that job, and they say, "Hey, we're going to pull your credit," it's important for you to know what it looks like. Okay, as I even said, even sometimes renting of an apartment, landlords pull credit. Not all of them, but many do. Okay. So again, what I try to get people to understand, I understand that the trauma can be real, but I also try to get them to understand that unless you acknowledge and know where you are, then you don't know where you can go and what you can do to come out of that situation. And secondarily, you can't, and this is not just for you guys. What I hope I'm doing today is giving you information that you will share with your children, because generational wealth is not just money, it's knowledge as well. But knowledge is not it has no power unless it's put into practice. So what I'm hoping is I'm sharing things with you that you may not have been, no one shared with you when you were your children or your nieces or your nephews, or if you have grandchildren their age, but you can share that with them so they avoid some of the trauma that you may have experienced. Does that help?
For me, it absolutely helps. You know, I've never ever had anybody talk to me about, you know, like in my family, nothing about like, you know, just stuff that people, I guess normal people, maybe the people on the phone, like think that, you know, like a mom, I'm sorry. Like my mom just passed like a couple of months ago, but like something that like a mom would teach you. And, you know, and she was a good mom, but she just never taught me because she ain't know, you know,
Exactly.
like.
No one taught her. And that's why what we're doing here, and it's all right. My mom passed away 2 years ago, so I understand completely. And you don't have to apologize for anything. That's why we're here, is that what we're trying to do is break some of the generational things that couldn't be broken because they didn't know any better. When we know better, not always, but we can do better. Okay, and that's all this is about, is knowing better. So now we can pass that knowledge on to the next generation. So your children can say, wow, my mom was able to do this. My mom came here from the Caribbean and was a domestic. But with what she learned, she was able to put all 3 of her children through college. Okay, well, she had nothing when she came to this country from the Caribbean. Okay, so part of why I do this is that every woman that I talk to, every man that I talk to, I look at them as they could be my parent. And if somebody would have been able to give her the information, now she was able, before she passed away, to buy a house. She was able to learn some things, but she always wishes she knew more. But she was able to give her children a greater opportunity than she had. And my hope is to give my children a greater opportunity than I was given. And that's all I try to do, is pass on the knowledge so that you can then share that with the next generation. First of all, use it for yourself, okay? Because just talking with you, you're a brilliant young lady who has tremendous potential. And you say, but you don't know me. Yes, I do, because first of all, you're here, you just met me, and you've already started to ask me questions with the boldness to be able to say, I don't care who knows that I don't know this. I'm gonna ask the questions. And so that's the first step, okay? And then once you take the knowledge and you begin to build on it, it's really not, it's not as difficult as it sounds. The biggest challenge is that we fear what we don't know. And so once we begin to know how it works, how things work, that's one of the great things about being a child. You know, one of the greatest advantages children have, they haven't really been taught to fear. So sometimes they'll take risks and do certain things that we're like, I would never do that. Well, a lot of times, the only time they learn to stop taking some risks, now you shouldn't take all risks, you take calculated risks, is because we teach them to fear. But you ever see a child and you hand them a piece of electronic device and so forth, they don't know how it works, but they're gonna mess with it until they figure it out. Most of us are like, I don't wanna look like I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, but I love this.
So I got a question.
All right, go ahead, Sheba.
Most of the people that we work with are coming from long-term incarceration. And this is great because there is no credit. There's you know, even like going to a bank and opening a bank account, I think sometimes they have to go in because they don't have the online history. So we're starting from zero. How does this help them? Like how do we start with credit when you are literally starting over with kind of nothing?
Now, Sheba, you're gonna jump me ahead all the way to the end of my presentation.
All right.
See, let me tell you what y'all are doing to me here. We just started dating, and now y'all want to get serious. We just in the dating phase, and y'all are. I'm gonna be here with y'all for the next 4 weeks. But I promise you, once we get to the end of this, I'm gonna talk to you about how to rebuild credit. I'm gonna talk to you how to establish credit if you have none. And the great news is today, there are more ways to reestablish credit and build credit if you have none or you've damaged it than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I promise you, we'll not get out of this without talking. And Sheba, when you and I talked, I told you, this is not the only group that I've ever talked to. In fact, I have other organizations that have returning citizens. So trust me, all of this is geared towards people who are starting from scratch. I deal with folks dealing with homelessness, folks who are refugees being resettled, okay? So all of this works. It's not anything that you have to have any special license for or start from a place. It just has to be, I wanna learn and I'm willing to put into practice what you teach me. And once you do that, you'll see it'll work for you, okay?
I'm gonna be quiet.
Oh no, keep asking questions. No, I'm good. I just want to let you know we're not going to get done with credit today, but I guarantee you before we get done with the credit in the next workshop, and then we'll pick up with savings and so forth, we will cover how to build and rebuild credit, even if you have none or if it's poor. We will absolutely do that, okay? All right, excellent, excellent. All right, so let's take a look at a simple transaction. And when I say simple, it's buying a car. And most people they don't really know how to buy a car, I'll say. They know what to do, but again, the strategy is flawed. So let's look at Ms. Garcia and Mr. Jones. They both want to buy the same car, okay? All right, so they decide they want to get a used car. They want to borrow no more than $10,000 and they don't want to stretch it out longer than 3 years. Okay, so they want to get a used vehicle. Okay, all right. And so one of the things that happens is that after they've had the car or had the loan for 3 years, Mr. Jones has paid almost $3,000 more than Ms. Garcia. So what happened? Well, of course, we're talking about credit. Mr. Jones has a 420 credit score. So that means he has to pay a higher interest rate. So he borrowed $10,000, but in his total of payments, he pays back $13,378. The $3,378 is interest. Ms. Garcia has a 720 credit score. So she's able to get 3.5%. So her total, she borrowed $10,000. You always have to pay that back to principal. That's what you borrowed. She only pays $548 in interest, $2,830 less. That's $2,830 that could be in her savings. That's $2,830 she could be putting towards her side hustle or business. That's $2,830 she could be saving towards taking a trip or putting towards a child's education. Okay. Also, as I mentioned to you before, insurance companies use credit. So Mr. Jones is probably also going to pay a higher insurance premium than Ms. Garcia for the exact same car. Also being male, he'll probably pay more because men are more reckless in their driving, but his credit score will also impact that. Okay. So what I'm showing you already is that that low credit score is taking money out of his pocket and putting it into the finance company, into the insurance company's pocket. And that's money he doesn't have to build wealth. Whereas Ms. Garcia, because of her credit score, she can. And let me show you something else when we talk about buying a car. I'm gonna help you out here. So one of the things that Ms. Garcia can do and should do is the first thing she should do when she decides I want to go buy a car is once she decides on which types of cars, if she has 3 different makes and models that she's interested in, the first thing she should do is go to her bank or her credit union and get pre-approved. She should get pre-approved for a certain amount and know the interest rate before she even goes to the dealership. The second thing she should do is she should contact her insurance company and say, I'm looking at these 2 or 3 vehicles. Can you tell me what the insurance premium will be on these 3 different vehicles? The reason she should do that, and what most people don't do, they usually don't call till after they bought the vehicle, is the insurance company will tell her that maybe one of those cars is much cheaper to insure because it has a higher safety record. That's important not only for saving money, but that may sway her decision on which car to buy. Okay. So again, most people just walk into a dealership or walk into some place and they go to buy a car and they haven't really done the 2 things they should do, which is once they've decided which vehicles they like, talk to their bank and get pre-approved and talk to their insurance company and find out what's it going to cost. Okay. In Mr. Jones's case, because he has a 420 credit score, he can't get pre-approved. And that's one of the dangers of having poor credit. He has to go to the dealership and take whatever interest rate they offer him. And he has no idea whether or not 20% is the best rate he can get. Chances are with a 420 it is, but he's at the whim of the dealer. The other advantage that Ms. Garcia has is if she's already pre-approved, she's got more negotiating power with that dealer than Mr. Jones does. Because if the dealership knows that she's already approved, and if they meet her price, she's going to be able to buy that car. Okay, then she may be able to negotiate an even better rate or better price on the car. Okay, any questions about what I talked about so far with regard to buying the car? And
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Keisha.
So I have 2 questions. One is, could you talk about getting a car under a business name as opposed to a personal vehicle? And then the second one is, you said about the safety ratings in terms of the insurance rate. What if it's a, like say this year, what if it's a 2023? Do they have safety ratings for like new vehicles?
They generally do because insurance companies have to know how to underwrite it. So they have generally once the any cars that are being sold, they have to have the safety ratings for it because then they have to know how to insure it. So for example, if there's a 2023 Honda Accord, I say Hondas because I love Hondas, a 2023 Honda Accord, they have to have the safety rating because that's one of the biggest factors along with other things that are factored into calculating your insurance rate. So they have to know how it's tested in those IHA or whatever they're called, the highway safety test. They have to have that information because that's factored into the price of your insurance policy. Okay, and then the other one, as far as buying it through a business. All right, first of all, if you're going to buy a car in the business's name, you have to generally have established, some business credit. But generally, it's still going to generally be based on your credit as well. It'll be to the business, so it won't show up on your personal credit report. But I was a small business lender. I will tell you that they're still going to pull your personal credit because you are the business in many instances. So if your personal credit is not strong, chances are you won't get approved for a business loan to buy the car. The main difference when you buy something through a business, when the business is the borrower. So let me explain that. When you buy something through a business, when the business is the borrower, okay, you are what's called a guarantor. You're not the borrower, you're the guarantor. So the loan is to the business. It'll help the business build business credit, but the borrower or the lender is still going to pull your credit because they know how you pay your personal credit is generally how you're going to pay the business's credit. But it will be to the business will be the owner, and the business is the one that's expected to pay it back. But if they don't, they will come to you. But that's the main difference. When you borrow something personally, you are the borrower. Through the business is the borrower, and chances are your business is going to have to have been in business at least 2 to 3 years at a minimum and show significant profitability for a lender to make a loan to the business and not to you personally. Did I help, Keisha?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Keep the questions coming. I love it. I love it. All right.
What if you, like for me, I when I did get my credit checked a long time ago and nothing has changed, the guy was like, you just don't have any credit. And he was like, that's almost worse than not having credit. Like, I've never had a credit card. Don't do card notes. I've never had any of that kind of stuff. So and I guess that's having bad credit.
No.
Because I don't have credit.
No, whoever told you that is incorrect. All right.
Okay.
What you're called is credit invisible. You have no score out there. Now, does that mean it could still be hard for you to get credit? Yes, but it's not the same as having bad credit, because it's generally easier to go from no credit to a good credit score than from damaged credit, because all you need to do is begin to establish it. But I'm gonna tell you the same thing, Keisha. I just told Sheba, I just met you. We're still just dating, okay? Next workshop, I'm gonna get into how to build credit if you have none, along with repairing damaged credit, okay? So that's easy, that's not difficult. I can give you several simple steps to begin to build credit so that your credit score will go up, and that within a year or so, you'll have a score in the 700s. That's a piece of cake. All right.
Okay.
It's 6:56, so I want to respect everybody's time. I want to leave any questions before I sign off. And like I said, I'll be back next week. The second half of credit, we'll get into all those things. I'll show you what makes up your credit. I'll show you why it's important to make payments above the minimum, because how long it takes to pay something off when you only make the minimum payment. One thing I do want to leave you with is I always tell folks, never, ever, ever pay somebody to help you fix your credit, okay? What I'm going to go over with you over the next several, today and next week, you will have all the knowledge and information you need to work on your credit. All somebody can do is the same things you are already doing. No one can do anything more than that to help you with your credit. So why pay them when it's something you can do yourself, okay? Well, thank you, Jolinda. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to more too, because you guys have some great questions. Any final questions before we go? All right. If we're good, Sheba, I'll turn it back over to you, and I will see you guys next week. And like I said, we'll pick up from credit. I will go through all the 5 factors that make up your credit. I will talk to you about what are the steps to do to rebuild credit. And then if we should have time, I will launch into our next, which will be savings. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about, difference between banks and credit unions. We'll talk about borrowing. We'll talk about building assets, all of that, okay? All right.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
I am not your subject matter expert on any of this, so I appreciate Sean and I appreciate y'all for coming. Questions, ask any questions. I appreciate you all taking the initiative to be here and do this, because it's really important, especially, in this arena. So thanks, y'all. I'll see y'all next week, God willing.
Take care.